Hey cookie creators and lovers alike, I'm Gabby, and today on the Cool Cookie Show, we're learning about icing consistency. In this video today, I will be discussing 3 different types of icing consistency. Stiff piping consistency icing, soft or medium piping consistency icing, and flooding icing. Stiff piping consistency icing is the type of icing you'd like to use when you want the icing to hold a specific shape once piped onto a surface or a cookie. Generally used for detailing such as flowers, and definitely the type of icing you'd want to use to glue your gingerbread house together, piping consistency icing is quite thick and will hold a variety of different shapes depending on the tip that you use in your icing bag. To see how to make a stiff piping consistency icing, check out my video for really easy royal icing, as I do start with a stiff piping consistency icing for my base before moving on to different consistencies. With soft or medium consistency piping icing, this type of icing is great for outlining cookies before flooding to make sure there isn't a drip over the side. Since it has a softness to it, it molds into the flooding consistency icing nicely, but is stiff enough that it doesn't allow the icing to roll over the edge of the cookie. A soft or medium piping consistency icing is also good for smaller details where you don't want to peek on the icing once you pull back your piping bag. For example, making polka dots, or like I do in my Charlie Brown Christmas cookies, piping light bulbs onto Snoopy's doghouse. As you can see, although still relatively thick, this type of icing will eventually flatten out once left long enough. It can hold a little bit of shape, but is much too soft for fine details. If you were to draw a line down the center of this icing, it would take a minute or so for the icing to combine back together. To give you a good example of the 2 different types of piping consistency icings, I'll be using some Wilton number 17 tips to show just how well the stiff piping consistency icing will hold up versus the soft/medium piping consistency icing. First off, we'll be trying our stiff piping consistency icing. You can see how it's strongly holding its shape and not melting in any way. With our soft or medium consistency piping icing, you can see the icing is so soft it's already trying to escape out the tip of the piping bag. You can see that this type of icing really isn't suited for detail, as it flattens out and looks much sloppier than our stiff piping consistency icing. With the same icing bags, I've changed the tips to number 1 Ateco tip. This way I can show you what the different consistencies look like when piping polka dots. If you take a closer look, with the stiff piping consistency icing, you can still see the peaks in the icing from where I pulled back my icing bag. With the soft or medium piping consistency icing, the dots are nice, smooth, and round, preferably the look you'd be going for. Each type of these piping consistencies have their benefits, depending on your desired outcome. When it comes to the different icing consistencies, it's really all about how much water you use. I like to start by making a stiff piping consistency icing, then divvy up my portions and add water as needed for the other consistencies I'll be using. In this case, let's make some flooding consistency icing. For this, you'll need your stiff piping consistency icing, some water, a spoon, and a spatula. I'm going to start by adding a minimal amount of water, Remember, you can always add more, but you can't take away. So start little by little. At this point, we're pretty much at a soft piping consistency icing. Let's add more water. In order to test and see if our flooding consistency icing is thin enough, I'm going to take my spatula and draw a straight line down the icing and start to count. In this case, it's taken about 10 to 12 seconds for my icing to combine back together. My ideal time would be about 15 seconds. No fret though, I'm just going to pipe in a little bit of stiff consistency icing to get the thickness back. Go ahead and mix that up again. The risk of creating flooding icing that's too thin can cause the icing to drip over the side of the cookie, as well as create craters in the icing while it's attempting to dry. Let's try our line again. At this point, I'm at about 20 seconds to 22 seconds to have my icing combined. So we're just going to add just a touch more water, very minimal. Now that is some great flooding consistency icing. Now with some patience and skill, let's dump our flooding consistency icing into our bottle. Now we'll wipe our edges with some paper towel so not to make a bigger mess. Screw on the top with our desired tip, and we're all ready to flood. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of The Cool Cookie Show. If you like this episode, give it a big thumbs up. Want to be a part of the creativity? Let me know what characters and shapes you'd like to see in the comments below. For more of my cookie creations, check out my channel, tune in every Tuesday, and don't forget to subscribe. Till next time, stay sweet.